Welcome, everyone. I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate your time. And for my speakers, I so appreciate, the knowledge that you are going to share. So welcome to supporting your teenager with online learning. Of course, we're not going to just stick with teenagers. We are focusing overall on children. All right, so this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed to other online platforms, as I stated, at a later time. I am Dr. Neva Helena Alexander, and I'm going to be the host and moderator today. Again, thank you. So a little bit about me. I have a company called Neva, and I also have a nonprofit organization. The nonprofit organization is called National Educational Venture Alliance, and that is actually what's sponsoring this event. So what exactly is National Educational Venture Alliance? Acronym NEVA. It was based out of my passion I believe in education, and especially on the college level. You could go on and be a movie star, you could go on and be whatever you want to be. But let me tell you something special about knowledge, right? Yeah, I believe in trade school, I believe in all of that stuff, but just going to a higher place of learning, right? You come out a different person. And so I wanted to give opportunities to individuals that are studying, of course, in the United States, because if you look at certain communities, they don't really have individuals to help them go through the college process. And if you're coming from the international realm, from the Caribbean, from Africa, from Europe, wherever, you don't necessarily understand the US system and how to maneuver through it. So I created this organization to do such. How do we function? We do charge minimal, but we rely on donation, right? So individuals donate to the organization. They may sponsor a child or a teenager, because really we're working with individuals that are ready for college. So they're like 16 and up, and they'll sponsor them. I've had individuals who don't have necessarily won't give you the money, but they will sign off on a letter for someone, just different ways to get the organization going. On the other part, by the way, and you could learn more about National Educational Venture Alliance at nationaleducational.org. On the other hand, I have Neva Alliance. The Neva Alliance has developed or evolved over the years, but right now we are recognized in the state of Florida. I'm actually in Florida at the moment. We're recognized more of a trade school or career school. I offer different things from the college preparation, GRE, GMAT, also individuals that are looking to get their license for insurance. We are approved to do that. And individuals who are looking to get into business, we have a program for that as well. And that's Neva Alliance in a nutshell, right? I know it's a lot, but that's just in a nutshell, right? So let's move on a little deeper about who I am, right? So that's my company, yeah? So I was raised by a mom who did not, her education basically stopped at primary school. And I was determined. Like, I'm going to break this cycle, right? So I basically, with a few funding, but I basically pushed myself to where I have a doctorate. Well, my bachelor's is in legal studies. My bachelor's is in social science. And I figure, you know what, I can roll this all up into education, right? So a doctorate in educational leadership, right? And so also I have traveled to many places. I've taught in many places, from Saudi Arabia, from Bahrain to um, I'm Jamaica. Let's not forget that. And I've just been around. I'm very passionate. I've done many different things when it comes to even events. Some of you know me from other events, and glad to see you here. Thank you so much. And I just want to highlight someone that came in. She's actually Dr. Corinne, and she's one of our sponsors for National Educational Venture Alliance. So really want to, say hello. Thank you, Dr. Corinne, for that. Now, let's move on. Now we have, there are pros and cons, pros and cons to online classes, right? You hear, online classes can be convenient. You hear it could be flexible, right? You you hear, depending if they're paying or not, it could be affordable. Some might say the interaction is better. Some might say that, right? But on the other hand, the disadvantage is sometimes the student or students will feel isolated. They don't have a way to really interact. It is not the same. You have to be self-disciplined, right? And one of the things I want to highlight is, you have to have teachers who are passionate, but there's so much a teacher can do. And then you also have the disadvantage. The advantage is technology. The disadvantage is also technology. I recalled just last year, I taught a class online for students that they're doing an environmental health class in Saudi Arabia. And I taught the class, and there was a time when I wasn't able to get the internet service properly. And they said to me, "Miss, are you sure you're in America?" And I'm like, "What is that supposed to mean?" Yes, I'm in America. But, the idea is if you're in America, the connection's supposed to be superb, right? So that is the thought process. So technology can be an issue as well. So those are some things that when it comes to online learning and really having the support for those students, it's important. Mental health, we're going to talk about it today. How the parents can support their students. We're going to talk about it today. And we have the experts to do so, from Dr. Ashman to Don to Ms. Verdel Jones. We're going to talk about it. And up first, we have Ms. Verdel Jones. All right. So let me give you a little intro. Mrs. Verdel Jones, she's a director of guidance and support services, right, at Plain Edge School District. Yes. And she's passionate. I want to stress passionate about education. She's a TV host. So it's not, she has that ton of other people to hear her. She's also a business owner, is Deliteach Enterprises, LLC. Mrs. Jones, please go on.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Neva. Thank you so much for having me as a panelist on this very important topic. And I am excited to be here and bring some information to everyone here and to my fellow panelists. It's an honor to be with you. I can't wait to hear your presentations as well. So I do have a PowerPoint. Being a teacher, I said, I gotta have a PowerPoint. I have to have my points. So I'm gonna share my screen. And I was having some problems. We were talking about technology. I was having some problems with my browser. It was just shutting down randomly. But as Dr. Neva said, I'm Verdel Jones, the Director of Guidance and Support Services for Plain Edge School District, which is on Long Island. It's in Nassau County. And this is my 17th year there. And my primary focus there is really just supporting our students and being an advocate for them and being an advocate for our parents as well. So we speak to parents. I speak to parents all the time. I supervise our guidance counselors in the district as well as our social workers. In addition to that, I am an author. I have a book called The Parent Agent, How to Represent Your Child and Get Them into the College of Their Choice. And I also am a talk show host. I've had a show for over 7 years called Conversations with Verdel Jones. And now my primary focus is our family show, Let's Kick It with the Joneses. And also I am a business owner. We've been able to give scholarships to students, a poetry slam scholarship over $5,000. And that's part of Deli Teach and my speaking as well. So let's get started. I want to make sure that I have enough time. I don't want to be too long, but I want to give you a couple of points that I think are so important in supporting our parents and supporting children as well. And I want to provide some support, strategies, and solutions that we can kind of take a look at. So we're going to go over grace. And when I was first thinking about what I wanted to speak about today, I thought about grace. And we all know that we've been through some challenging times. And I think it's very important for us to give grace. So we're going to talk about grace briefly. Conversations you should be having with your children, and conversations you should be having with those who can support your children as well. And then beyond COVID-19, prepping for the future. So I saw this little quote and I thought it really spoke to my feeling around grit and grace. So we often hear that word grit. And when I'm talking to college admissions reps, one of the things that they stress is grit. And they want our children to have that. But with grit, as the quote says, it determines that life challenges will neither defeat or define us. But with grace, gives us kindness. Grace gives kindness to ourselves and others, even when it's hard. And during these challenging times, I think it's important to give grace to yourself, because we're going through this and trying to navigate as best we can. Give grace to your children and give grace to those supporting your children as well. Like I said, it's not just isolated, which is such an interesting thing about this time. It's a global thing. It impacts everyone. So everyone is touched by it, and we should give each other some grace around this challenging time as well. So conversations, and what I mean by that is getting to know your children. I had mentioned that I wrote a book called The Parent Agent, How to Represent Your Child and Get Them into the College of Their Choice. And one of the main things, or a lot of what I talk about, is getting to know your child to set them up for success. Because the more you know your child, the more you're able to put them in situations that are beneficial to them and help them thrive, not only as a person, but as a student, as a learner. So we have to talk to our children. One of the things that I think parents sometimes find challenging, especially with teenagers, is talking to them and being able to hear their voice and letting them voice their opinions or voice their concerns. So in the book I give, and this is for younger children too, I give a list of questions that parents can actually ask their students to get the conversation started. With our own children, I have 2 children. They're grownish children now, 29 and 25. And we always had conversations with them. And some of the questions that we asked them to spark that, conversation were, what's your favorite thing about school? What's your least favorite thing about school? What are 3 things that you do well? You want to encourage them. And who is your best friend and why? And I have more questions, but the last one I'll leave you with, if you could spend the day doing anything you wanted to do, what would that be? And in asking your children these questions, it really is a jump start to getting to know them and gaining insight to who they are. And it doesn't matter what age they are. I think it's just important to continue having those conversations with your children and getting to know them. So conversations, very, very important. And to kind of further that discussion, I wanted to talk about the best ways to support your children, because I said I wanted to give support strategies and solutions. There's a delicate balance, especially when you're talking about teenagers, because teenagers want to be able to do things on their own. And parents think they might be able to do things, some things on their own. But I think it's very important for us to strike that balance, especially with our teenagers. They still need us, and they probably need us even more, but in different ways. So in supporting your children with school in general, and specifically online tasks, I think it's very imperative to stick to a schedule. Now, districts are doing things, differently. I would say, there's disparities from district to district, and they all do things a little bit differently. You might have a school that only has your child working in front of the computer per se for an hour, or you might have a situation where the teacher is actually conducting the lesson and your student is sitting there for hours upon hours taking in the content. So things are structured a little bit differently, but I think it's important to, set a schedule, set a routine, and get your child's input from it as well. If maybe you can say, all right, after you do this, then you can, play video games. We know kids love playing video games, or maybe you can spend time, talking with a friend or FaceTiming with a friend. But I think sticking to a schedule is so important. And that's from little kids all the way up to teenagers. A schedule needs to be in place because kids want that consistency as much as we can give that to them. Another thing that I think is very important and is setting up an effective workspace for your children. Everyone has a different situation within their household, but you can make sure that your students have the supplies that they need to be able to be successful in the class as well. That goes for online and in school. One of the challenging things, and I'm going to talk about challenges a little bit, but one of the biggest complaints about the online learning that I've heard from teachers is that the students don't turn on their screen. They don't want to be seen. And that's a big challenge for teachers. And some teachers are strict with it. You have to turn on your monitor. I have to see you. But, I took a step back on that and thinking of my own experience. As we went into the pandemic, I had to work from home. I had to bring my work into my home. And that was very uncomfortable for me because I'm not used to that. When I go to work, I do work at home when I come from work, but I don't bring work home. I don't bring work in my house with the meetings that we have to have, the conversations that we had to have with, whether it be parents or students or even, our administrators or my counselors, what have you. So think about it from a child's perspective. They're asked to bring the school into their home, which is a safe place for most students. So they're in their bedroom and they have to learn and show everybody in the class their safe space. So that is uncomfortable for some students. So it might not be every student, but some students that could be a problem for them. So creating a space where they feel comfortable to be able to share their screen per se is very, very important in an online platform, especially when you're talking about teenagers. So support executive functioning. We always hear that term, executive functioning. Executive functioning has to do with adaptable learning, planning, your self-monitoring, self-control, your organization, and your time management. So as a parent, you should support your children with these executive function skills. Help them with their organization. Help them with being able to self-monitor what they're doing and take control of what they're doing. I think it's a very important thing that students need to learn. And so they don't know these things, just instinctually. These are things that need to be taught and kind of supported. Setting clear boundaries for your students as well. I know when my kids were younger, they would come home with a project. And it would be, a fun project, and I would take the project over. I would do a lot of the project for them because it was fun for me too. But especially with our high school students, first of all, a lot of the stuff I wouldn't even know how to do, especially the math part of it. But we have to set clear boundaries in the sense that you're going to let your child do the work. And don't be so quick to jump in to rescue them, to let them figure it out. And some students might say, you can help me as much as you want, mom or dad. And some might say, don't help me at all. But I think you need to set those clear boundaries, not do the work for them, but support them in their work and ask them what they need to be supported. And then finally, supporting your children is building independence. And all these skills that I was talking about to support your children, these will benefit them in school, again, when they're in high school, when they're in elementary, middle school, but also when they go to college. Everybody needs to have executive functioning skills. But that independence, I think, is so important to help them be able to fall and get back up, and to be able to know how to sit at their desk and be able to use tools that you help support them with, whether it be a planner, whether it be something written on the board. I know when our kids were younger, we always had we still have a calendar up, and we put in things that they need to know. And I think that's important. That's a strategy or skill that you can help your child with. Sometimes it's electronic. Sometimes, I prefer to have an actual calendar up on a board or the refrigerator or whatever it might be, so everybody's accountable, because everybody sees it in the household. So that's a skill, and it builds independence, because they can write things on the board for themselves. They know exactly what they need to do. So just working with our kids in that way, I think, is very, very important. Okay, let's move on to recognizing challenges. Now, there's going to be challenges that come along, whether your child is learning online or they are in school. I know for our particular district, all of our students are in school. We have no online learning. Well, that's not true. If the child is impacted by COVID-19, we do provide remote learning for students. So, with the new variant that was out, we had a lot of kids that had to participate in remote learning. So some of these, and you never know when that's going to happen again. So we recognize that there's challenges that our students are going to have. And as I was stating earlier, I'm really a believer in a cooperative type of solution. Asking your child, what is it that I could do to support you? Instead of just assuming what they need to support them. And it goes back to those conversations. Asking them, well, if you get this done, if you turn on your screen for 15 minutes, baby steps, maybe that might be something that they would be willing to do, and then praise them at least for trying to make that attempt. So taking a cooperative stance and working with your child on this. Observe their strengths, acknowledge their strengths. So when they do accomplish something big or small, you can acknowledge them and validate them. And that gets into the taking concerns seriously. And I'm so excited to hear about the mental health piece on this, because we know that students are struggling. So we've gone through a season where are just kind of processing what has happened. And we're seeing it in our schools. We're seeing with our kids, they really are having a hard time dealing with being back in school, not having that time with their friends that they couldn't have during the whole, everything that's been going on. So we have to take this concerns of our students, of our children, seriously. As a counselor, I'm used to, a student coming in and, they are really upset about something. And on the outside, to me, I'm an adult. I'm like, this is what is the matter with them? But it's so serious to our children, what they go through. And it could be something very minor, but it really has impact. So take their concerns seriously. And we have to recalibrate our expectations. As I had said in the beginning, giving our children grace, giving ourselves grace. Being able to know that things might not be exactly the way that we anticipate they might be. And just going back to the taking our children's concerns seriously, we have to do that in our speak. We have to validate them. So if they're feeling anxious, we have to validate them and say, yeah, I know you're feeling anxious. I understand this might be overwhelming for you. What can we do to support you? And then the last piece on the challenging or recognizing challenges is avoid reoccurring arguments. It's like that old saying, you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So avoiding those arguments, I think there's value to finding out what the real issue is with your child. Are they not doing what you need them to do because they just don't want to? Or is there a barrier? Is there a barrier for them to being able to achieve that? Sometimes it's not, they just don't want to do it. But you have to avoid those reoccurring arguments and maybe take a different spin on it and ask them, what can I do to help you with this? You seem to be having a challenge with this. What can I do to support you? What do you need from me to support you in this effort? So those are some challenges that we can take a look at and recognize and work on solutions. And I think that has to do with those conversations, like I said before. More conversations. Teachers are there for, as a resource. They can help your child with the coursework. You can reach out to the teacher in reference to extra help and find out what the status and the grades are. I work with a lot of teachers, and they are sometimes very afraid to talk to the parents for whatever reason. I'm not sure what it is, but they are very scared to talk to parents. So parents, call them. If you call them, you see your child is struggling in some area, call them, reach out to them, see what can be done, and see what support the teacher can offer your child to get them to where they need to be. A child might not be failing, but they're not getting the grades that you want them to get. Call them, call the teacher. The teacher is there to support you and to support your child. And teachers are also confidants to some of our students as well. And they're a good resource for parents to tap into. And school counselors, they're there for some social and emotional support. So if your student is struggling or if there's an issue that's going on in your household, I know some people don't like to, share their business with people sometimes, but the school counselor is definitely a good resource to support your child in school and to let the teachers know, hey, this child is going through a situation. They don't have to be specific in that situation, but they know that the child might be going through something. So that social emotional support is very important. Academic supports as well. Counselors can tap you into resources that are valuable for your students and help them in their learning as well, maybe even outside of the teachers' resources that are available. Post-secondary education, one of my favorites. They are definitely a resource to help you with those the planning and the process of post-secondary education. And events. We lost a lot of events during the lockdown and COVID and online learning and all of that. Reach out to the counselor. They're a great starting point to find out what events are actually going on that I may have missed or that are coming now that we're opening up a little bit. So those are some things, again, with the conversations. And the last piece I'll talk about is post-secondary plans. Things have changed in the world of college during this time. College exploration is pretty much, similar in the fact that you can tap into resources to get what you need to find out about different colleges. But again, going back to the counselor is also helpful. Dr. Neva has a great resource for people to tap into also for college exploration. Standardized tests, I think, is an important one. It's a big piece of the post-secondary plans. A lot of colleges are going test optional. What that means is the ACT and SAT are not necessarily required for your application for college admissions. I was on a conference with several Tier 1 and Ivy League schools a couple of days ago, and it will not hurt a student if they do not present these scores. So students need to know that test optional is a real thing. And about 50%, all the schools that were on there, it was like Fordham and NYU, Columbia, and some other schools, they said 50% of their applicants did not submit a SAT or ACT score. So I think that's very valuable information. College visits are looking a little bit different. Again, I was talking about events before. These are some of the events that students did not get to do. However, with the online, a lot of colleges pivoted and they went to having programs that are online. And the beauty of that is students who might not have the access to getting to on a college campus or talking to a college rep at their school, they can now do that virtually. So there's a lot of opportunities for students to take advantage of college visits that way. Other resources, I am always available to, if anybody has any questions about anything that I mentioned today. My email address is there. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find Conversations with Verdel Jones on Facebook and YouTube. And Deli Teach is my organization. And Let's Kick It with the Joneses is our family show. So if anybody has any concerns or questions, or you want to ask me any information about any of this, I can tap you into the resources that you may need. And with that being said, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Really appreciate the knowledge that you share. We will have some time for questions that anyone have for Mrs. Verdel Jones. I do want to say something before I go to the comment, because I know there were some individuals in the chat box. The ACT and SAT is optional. However, for international students outside of the country, it is the optional part is not really there because it's used as a way to measure if they're
Age.
getting any kind of scholarship or anything
Right.
like that.
So and that was one of the, topics in the discussion in reference to that. And my advice to anyone who is thinking about test optional, if you're a good test taker, take that test. But if you're thinking about going test optional, please, every single college has on their website testing information. So you can go to the college website, type in testing policy, and then find out exactly what they want. Some colleges will say we don't want them, but it might impact scholarships. So that's something that you really have to, it's individualized. There's 4,000 plus 4,500 colleges out there. So they do things a little bit differently. So you want to make sure that you get the information directly from the college.
Thank you. Dr. G said, I think executive function is often overlooked, taken for granted.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And is it someone is okay, hi, she's waving, she's asking for the PowerPoint, the presentation, if it could be emailed. This recording will also be it's re-recorded. It's recorded right now, but we're also going to have it on other online platform at a later date, so others can whoever
Okay.
missed it can watch it again.